In this first video on mapping Logic smart controls to third-party plugins, I'd like to talk about some concepts. First off, let's go ahead and make sure that you have your preferences set correctly. Command comma will open up the preference window. I'm going over to the Advanced tab. Make sure everything is enabled here. You'll have a lot better luck working with this kind of thing. So what are smart controls and how do you get to them? So let's talk about smart controls. Smart controls are an interface that allow you to connect knobs and sliders and buttons to elements of a channel strip. Further, you can also connect those or map those to a MIDI controller. Let's go ahead and take a look at discovering the smart controls. There are 4 ways to open up the smart controls window. We have a double click on an icon. You can see it down here. Double clicking again will close that. You have a floating window, standalone window. Open smart controls, Command 3. Let's go ahead and close that out. Across your control bar, you have your button here. Smart controls will open and close it. And lastly, the letter B does the same thing. Let me click on this one, and you can see the look and the names and everything are different. And lastly, we can go to this, and it looks quite a bit different. And this is linked via Vina Ensemble Pro to a Kontakt plugin. Logic does a very good job of mapping it to its own native plugins. It has a little bit more of a challenge depending on what the third-party plugin is, so we'll explore a number of those. While Logic does a very good job of intelligently mapping your smart controls both to the parameters on the channel strip and to your MIDI controller, we'll take a look at editing those mappings in future videos. Your MIDI controller may already be self-mapped, and let's take a look at that real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in a MIDI controller here. And if it's the first time Logic is seeing it, you'll get this window here. And it asks, what do you want to do here? It says it'll automatically assign the controls. So here we have my nano control. It doesn't necessarily do everything, but it's a good start. So it's asking if we want to use this auto assignment or not. And you can change this at any point in time. So let's go ahead and accept it. And what it's going to do right now is that if I move one of my knobs across my Korg nano control, these will update and start moving. So let me move knob number 1. And you can see it's moving there. And if I go across knobs 1 through 8, all of them will automatically be assigned to our knobs here, our screen control knobs. This screen control mapping to the MIDI hardware controller is consistent if I go to my new channel strip here, different set of controls, again, knob 1, and I can go to my third track here, and knob 1, we're always able to determine in advance the mapping assignment of our hardware controller if we use auto assign. Now, we can break all that, and what parameter it's assigned to on the channel strip is all the discussion of another video. Let's just talk about auto assign here for a second. Let me go ahead and open up my preferences again, selecting Control Surfaces and MIDI Controllers tab. And you can see here's my nano control. If I choose not to have it be auto assigned, I can simply uncheck this. And now when I move a knob, in fact, nothing happens down here on the parameter. Let me do it one more time. So we've broken that mapping. Let me go ahead and check this again. And moving the knob, and you can see it works. Another thing you can see is that the MIDI in information has been stolen when it's mapped like this. So right now I'll move a knob, and we see nothing up here. Let me go ahead and uncheck this and move a knob. And we get MIDI information here. So a little way of telling whether it's working or not. So whether your MIDI controller will work with auto assign or not is subject to support by Apple. And at the end of this video, I'll show you the link to their website where you'll find some information on auto assign and the list of currently supported devices. So that's all I'd like to cover on this particular tutorial. So again, the concepts in this particular series are taking the screen controls, which we have down here in the Smart Controls window, and we're going to map those to particular elements of the channel strip, and we're also going to map them to elements of our MIDI controller. Remember, these are unique to each track. If you like something, save it. Select your track, hit save it in the pathway here, give it a significant name, and you'll be able to retrieve it under your user patches over here. Also, there's another series at groove3.com that's called Smart Controls Explained. It goes into a lot more detail on specific tips and tricks on working with smart controls. Here we're primarily dealing with issues we'll have with third-party plugins. As always, thanks for watching. I hope this gives you an idea on where we might be going in the ensuing series, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls, we're going to take a look at the Smart Control interface. So this is always going to be unique to whatever track we select. We can go through here. Here's Amplitude. By the way, the reason I'm showing you this is, see how it's rather cryptic. Here's Amplitude. Here's Omnisphere. Play is even worse here. In fact, Play just doesn't play well at all. Here's Kontakt. A little more informative perhaps, but not too informative initially. So let's go to Logic. I've got a channel strip with Logic instruments and plugins, and it just works beautifully. Let's go ahead and use this as our example, and then we'll see how to apply it to our third-party plugins. This is just very good for showing how the smart controls are working. So the smart controls, and this is your screen controls area right here, your smart controls are mapped to any element, basically, within your channel strip. This could be your volume fader, pan, send volume, any parameter on one of your plugins, or in the case of a software instrument track, parameters on your instrument. Let's go across the top here and see what we have. Let me go ahead and close the inspector. Here's our inspector. Our compare button. If you've been manipulating things since the last time you saved, the compare will be lit up. We can click and it'll bring it back to whatever values you had. We can go back and compare again. Let's leave it back in the original state. Turn compare switch off. You have your controls tab here. If you click on EQ, if you have no EQ, channel EQ that is, instantiated in your channel strip, it'll open one for you. If you have one or more than one, it'll open the first or only channel EQ in your audio effects list. So let's go ahead and click on this. And here we have our channel EQ, and we can manipulate accordingly. Let's go back to the controls tab. And lastly, we have over here the ability to instantiate a MIDI arpeggiator in the MIDI effects slot. If I click on this, we now have a MIDI arpeggiator here. We go ahead and close this out. We also have a nice list of settings that we can navigate through and change. If we click this button, it effectively turns the arpeggiator off, no different than toggling the on-off button on the arpeggiator interface itself. If we have an audio track, the only difference between the two tracks is here we now have a tuning fork. And when we click this, it'll open up our tuner for us. Okay, back to the software instrument track. You may be looking at this and wondering, how do I know what is mapped to what? Well, control-click or right-click gives you this open plugin window. We can click, and there's our plugin. Let me do Command-3 to open up a different smart control. It's a little hard on this screen to see everything. And I'll move this over just a skosh. And so we can start moving things. And if we look over here, we can see that our timbre is actually moving this around for us. And if we move it around, well, let's listen to it. Let's play a note. And I already have this smart control mapped via auto assign. So I'm just going to hit a note on my keyboard and move my chord controller knob. And we have cutoff here, and we move this around. We can see our knob here moving. We can play another note or two. So you get the drill on this, and it's all automatable, by the way. All right, let me go ahead and get rid of our ES2 there, at least for the moment, and get rid of this. And let's go to someplace else here, and we're going to go ahead and control-click here. And notice I don't get any pop-up window like it says open plugin here because ambience happens to be assigned to bus number 1 signal. So there is no plugin to open up. So just a heads up on that. You can always tell which smart control is selected if you have your inspector open. So let's go ahead and open up the inspector. And now you can see the blue halo, blue halo, blue halo, blue halo. So if we want to manipulate something, let's talk about manipulation. Logic automatically picks a GUI for us. You can modify that. List of layouts here, factory layouts. Let's go to Soundscape 12. Looks something like this. Notice we have some mapped items. We can make those disappear if we close the inspector. As we click these, we get different settings based on what our mapping is all about here. We can change timbre or chord or cutoff. Here's grit. Let's go ahead and change that name, by the way. We'll just change that to true grit. Okay, so easily renamed. You can change the mapping as well. You can actually break the mapping. Let's go ahead and take a look at our menu items here. Cut, copy, paste, delete, select all. You can map all controls, and that's like rolling the dice, basically. Let me go ahead and do this. And we have a whole different set of things here. So be careful when you do that. You may not like what you see, but we can change all that. We've seen map all controls. Map unmapped controls had we had any unmapped controls there, it would have mapped them for us. You can add a mapping, which is a secondary mapping to a screen control here. And you can delete all patch mappings, which is something like this. Now everything is unmapped. Let's go back here and map all controls. And here's what we got. So let's say you want to remap something. You don't like what it is. Easiest thing to do, I think, is to go ahead and open the plugin. And let me go ahead and reopen the standalone Smart Controls window. It's better for our visuals here. We'll get our inspector. It's going to be a little smaller here now, but we can see the inspector and the knob a little better. So let's say we want to remap this back to timbre. So I'm going to go to Learn here. We have a red halo. And I'm going to go ahead and move this puck around. And there we are. Now notice we have a naming issue here and it still says cutoff. Let's go ahead and take care of that by renaming. Be sure you remember to unlearn when you get a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and close that window. And let's take a look at something else here. So let's say we do want to remap bus number 1, and we're going to call that ambience again. So let's go into something that's called mix right now. I'm going to go ahead and learn. I'm going to go ahead and move the bus 1 volume. And of course, it's calling it send 1, which is fine. It's more accurate. It has to be sending to bus 1. So let's turn that off. So this is a fast, easy way to map. Now, you can also do it. Let's go ahead and select something. You can navigate through this menu right here. This is the same as the hierarchical menu you'll see in the automation menu in the work area. So we could navigate to whatever we want, and let's assign it to the channel strip volume, as a matter of fact, for simplicity. So if I manipulate this, you can see my input fader moving up and down. So that's another way to map. We have range, we have a number of other things as well. We have external mapping as well. Not going to talk about any of the range. I will talk about external mapping later on in this tutorial series. That's how we do all the mapping. Again, we go back, we look at these things and go, oh my gosh, third-party plugins, cryptic as heck. I'll show you how to resolve all that, VEP, that type of thing. Remember, these are saved with the channel strip. If you like what you've done, you can open up the library, letter Y does that, hit save with the channel strip selected, and go ahead and name it something significant, and then you'll be able to find it in your user library patches. We can navigate over here and you can see user patches right here. That's all I've got for you on this particular tutorial. So again, the smart controls are unique to each channel strip, and they're based on what your plugins are, how they will be mapped. And you can break the mapping in 2 manners. You can either do a learn function, as we've seen, or you can navigate through the hierarchical menu here. So thanks as always for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls, we're going to take a look at the Kontakt 5 player and see how it interfaces and how well it works. And this actually works pretty well in general. Let's go ahead and take a look. I have an instance of a Kontakt player on track 1. I've opened up my smart controls. See, it defaults to this look here, and you can see names are picked up. And this may seem a little cryptic if you're not familiar with your plugin. Let's go ahead and open that plugin. So I'm going to control click on any one of these screen controls here, and we get the open plugin window. And I click on that and it opens up a plugin, which is Gravity. And I access Gravity via the Libraries tab in the Kontakt player, thusly and set up my instrument. So this process works very well with all the instruments that show up in the Libraries tab. I'm going to Automation now, and I'm making sure I have the Host Automation tab selected. And then this shows me a bunch of information here. It goes from 000 to 511, and it automatically maps a number of parameters from your plugin to this column. And this column is the common information that Smart Controls uses. So it's very important this is set up in a manner that works for you. If for some reason you do not have something mapped or not mapped in the way you want it to, it's very easy to change this. Let me just scroll down to an empty spot here, 062. All I have to do is grab this and drop it on any parameter here, and I get a plus sign, and I release with the mouse, and it shows you the parameter, modulation amount, and the patch, grain grudge MW. If you decide you don't want something mapped to a slot or location, you can navigate down here and simply click on Remove. Voila, it's gone. Let's talk about Smart Controls, and I think I'm best served again moving this over and opening up a freestanding window. So I'm going up to Window here, Smart Controls, and let's see if we can get everybody into the party best we can. I think this will work about as good as we get. I have my inspector here. Here's my gravity plugin. If we want to see what's been mapped, I can move this first knob, and actually it defines it over here by navigating to it, and a red light flashes. So you'll see a red light flash over here. I'll move this knob. Let me move the second knob. And you can see we get a light flashing over here, and we get a parameter moving here. I'm using Logic's auto assign for my Smart Controls, so they're automatically mapping the first 8 knobs of my Korg Nano control across here. So if I choose to use the Nano control, it's already pre-mapped. So let's take a look at Punish. We have it selected here. And the Punish parameter is currently off. We can toggle it off and on with this knob over here. You could have had a screen control with a button, which would do the same thing. Let's go ahead and activate it. And it's on over here now. So Punish will be effective. Let me go ahead and hide my plugin just for a moment. I'm going to solo this track that we have here. We can listen to it momentarily. Okay, you get the idea on that. And let me bring back the other Smart Controls window. So I happen to know this is mapped to my Punish amount over here. So let's go ahead and just manipulate right now. So you get the drill on that. That's how that's going to work. And so if you want to remap a control, this is not to your satisfaction. This is affecting Punish. And let's say we want to do a treble boost over here in the EQ section. We can simply hit the Learn button over here, select the screen control that we'd like to have remapped. I'm going to manipulate the treble over here. And this is updated here. And you can see even the name is updated at this point. So if I turn it off and I manipulate this knob, you're going to see the treble move over here. Let me go ahead and manipulate the knob up and down for a moment. And if the plugin was playing, we would hear the boost and cut in the treble. So let's go to another track. This is a Kontakt 5 player as well with the same instrument, same gravity, plus another instrument, which is an Aeon down here. And let me drag these regions over thusly, and let's get out of solo here and solo these two now simultaneously. And let me go ahead and open the plugin by doing the same thing that I did before. Control-click down here to get the open plugin window. And you can see that we have gravity, and let's make sure it's updated. Let's select the right track. There we go. And let me close gravity for right now so we can see the second instrument here. Now, if we go back to our first track, first instrument, you'll see that mapping stopped at 061. Here's 062. If we select our second instance of Kontakt with 2 instruments in it, at 062, we start getting information for our kalimba piano here. Let me go ahead and hide this plugin. Letter V does that. And to explain, I have my original channel strip here, accessing the plugin, and then I brought up my auxiliary channel strip where you can record and play back MIDI as well. So that's what this track is actually the auxiliary channel strip. It will not have any smart controls because smart controls are assigned to the channel strip, not an auxiliary channel strip like this is. Okay, but we can access the Aeon and we can reassign any of these. We could roll the dice, we could get a bigger control. In fact, let's navigate over here and let's get something with 12 in it. And so we have some unassigned. Let's say we love all of these and we want to go ahead and map something else here. So I'm going to select this one And what we need to do now is navigate to our plugin. So let me go ahead and bring it back up with the letter V and see if we can get enough visual love here. I've got to select Learn. Let's move this over a little bit to our, well, let's go ahead and select this knob right here. All right, so this is in Learn mode, then we can see everything here. And let's say I want to assign it to our feedback knob. So the nice thing is this works really well. So I simply move this, it's set up over here. And if I move it here, you can see it's lining up there and flashing back and forth. So we're all mapped. Pretty easy. All right, so you could do this for as many instruments, of course, as you have in Kontakt, and as many screen controls as you're able to map. And you'll find that there are normally a maximum of 12 screen controls. Let me go ahead then and let's solo just the specific Aeon instrument here. And again, we lose our plugin. Let's go back in and select the track. And we'll move this off to one side and see if we can hear a difference. Let's play it right now. Let me hit return and I'll bump up that feedback. All right. Again, all these things I'm showing you are automatable, which we'll deal with later on. So this is a way to address two or more, arguably, instruments in Kontakt. We have to make sure our automation assignments are first in this list, and then secondarily, we can go here and map accordingly to our smart controls. And if they are not in this list, you know how to do that. Simply drag one of your empty slots over, or you could use an existing one, and it'll be remapped. And then drag it over the parameter you'd like to have mapped to that particular automation slot. And if you need to break anything, once something is mapped, you can go down to remove. Okay, that's the story on the Kontakt player. Works pretty well with smart controls. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at IK Multimedia's Amplitube 4. And this plugin is a good example of having quite a lot of things that can be manipulated with smart controls, but using an interface that will require you to do extra steps to get them working. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here. I have my guitar track here, and in my channel strip, I have Amplitube, Tape Delay, and Space Designer. So when working with automation in Amplitube 4, you have down here in the bottom right something that says Auto, that stands for automation. If we click on that, we get a window. And I've already done a little bit of mapping, and we'll talk about this here, but you can see you have a menu of everything in your plugin here. And you can navigate. Here I've got Amp A, and I can navigate down to Orange. And I'm using the dual terror, so I could open up that. And I could move things around into this column over here. Let me show you how that's done. You can see this is grayed out because it's already been moved over. Let me simply remove all right now. So we're going to start fresh. So if I want the fat channel volume from my amplifier into my list of parameters here, 1 through 16, I can simply select it and go to Add. And it brings it in here. Let's go ahead and remove it. Now it'll bring it into any parameter slot that I select. I could assign it to parameter 7. And at that point, if I decide I want it somewhere else, I can hit the move up, move down button. So you can rotate these things all the way through. Let's take it all the way to the top for now. This is a little bit laborious. Amplitude is very well endowed with lots of parameters. Let me go ahead and show you a faster way. I'm going to click on OK. Let's go to our stomp box selection here. And you can see I've got a phaser inserted. If you want to know whether a control on your plug-in, amplifier, whatever, will work with smart controls, simply right-click or control-click on it, and you'll get Assign Automation. This says Bypass, and that shows you which slot you can assign it to. You can see where we've done our volume for our amp, and you can override that just by selecting that slot. And let's go back in and take a look at it now, open it up. And you can see it's right there. If you decide you want to delete an assignment, you can still do it at this point in time. Go ahead and do that and delete it. And again, right-clicking, bypass, and it's gone. Let's go ahead and assign it right here. we can continue to navigate across our different elements in our amplitude 4 setting. Here's our amp. I can right-click on this, assign automation, fat channel volume. Let's go ahead and assign it to parameter 2. And let's keep going here, and let's go to insert A. And here I have a harmonizer. Let me go ahead and do the level here. Let's assign this to the parameter 3 slot. And we could keep going with different elements. This is about all I have really in this plugin. That's quite a bit. So let's go back to our master view here, and you can see here's our phaser bypass, which is simply an on-off. We have the volume for the amp, and we have the volume level for our harmonizer for the added voice there. Again, we could move these up and down. We could remove one. We could remove all. We'll click OK. But remembering what we have, parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3, and parameters are what we're using to set up smart controls. So let me hit the letter B to open up smart controls, and we're fortunate enough we can see both the plugin and the smart controls below it. And you can see the smart controls are going to default anytime you have a channel strip with the amplitude 4 with parameter 1, parameter 2, parameter 3. It could be parameter whatever through parameter 16. So let's go ahead and take advantage of these now, and we should see our phaser turning on and off. Let me go ahead and click OK and get out of this. Hit the stop box and move this up and down, and you can see it light up there as well. Okay, we've got that, so that's a way to turn it on and off. Let's go ahead and name this. We'll call this phaser. And parameter 2, if we've forgotten what it is, we can go back here to our overview page, and it's the dual terror volume. So let's get out of this. We hit cancel for now, go to the amp, and we should be able to move this. And we can see this moving. We can call this amp volume. And parameter 3 is for our harmony part, so we'll just call it harmony. Let's say, well, that's all well and good, Doug, but where are the other things I've got unmapped? I want parameter 16. Well, you can map any one of these screen controls. You can either break the mapping and map anew or find something that's unmapped. Let me go ahead and select this. And I'm going to go over to our menu over here. And you can see now, I'm navigating here. I'm going to amplitude 4, and here is the list of the 16 parameters. Let's say I want to assign this to parameter 16. Bam, I'm done. And this is how you map to Amplitube. You can't use the learn method like we've seen with Logic's plugins and other third-party plugins. It just doesn't work here. You need to go through the process of first setting up your parameters that you'd like to use with automatable devices, in this case, manipulated by smart controls. Once you set that up, and you will have them show up here, or you can assign them, like I've done here, and you can then, of course, name them so you know what they are and begin to manipulate them. So with that in mind, let's just go ahead and play this a little bit, and we'll get our guitar track in here and try to get everybody into the party here. Here's the guitar track. Let's go ahead and solo it. And of course, I could manipulate the volume. Right now our phaser is off. We can go over here to our Stomp A page, and we can manipulate this to turn it on. And if we go to parameter 3, let's go ahead and look at our inserts here, and we're going to add some volume here, play with our volume. Let's get this kind of zeroed out right now. And in context with everything playing. And of course, you can manipulate as it's playing, and you could record those manipulations as well. So that's Amplitube. You need to assign in your page here the parameters you want. The easiest way is to right or control click on a given parameter within the plugin, depending on what you have, quite an array of things you can have here. And then Logic will already have picked up in Smart Controls parameter 1, parameter 2, etc., and so forth. And you can then name those accordingly. If you need to map an existing or unmapped screen control in Logic, simply select it, and you have to navigate through this menu here, navigate to Amplitude, and select which parameter you'd like to map that knob to. So you're mapping to the 16 choices within the smart controls, and you are assigning what is being manipulated or automated by assigning a parameter from Amplitude to these particular slots. Okay, as always, thanks for watching. Hope that gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at using Vienna Ensemble Pro to host an instance of Kontakt using Gravity, and we'll also look at Cakewalk Zeta Plus 2 in there as well. So we've taken a look at Kontakt in another video in this series. You can see the smart controls show up. We've explained that, how it's mapped within Kontakt, and actually learns quite nicely using the Learn feature. Let's navigate down here to my Vienna Ensemble Pro track. And smart controls change a little bit, only in their names. They happen to share the same screen layout. So parameter 1 through parameter 8, not too informative right now. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. You might think you could navigate to the Vienna Ensemble Pro plugin using right-click or control-click and clicking on Open Plugin window. And not quite. Get you the connection window, which is fine. We're going to go ahead and close that up. And that's what's instantiated right here in our channel strip. Let me go ahead and Command-Tab over to the Vienna Ensemble Pro. And here you can see we have a channel strip with Kontakt and with the Zeta Plus 2. So if we open up Kontakt, it's Gravity. We've got the automation tab selected. You can see all our values here, all explained in a previous video. So let's figure out how we can make this work with Logic and Vienna Ensemble Pro. And it actually works kind of nicely. So what we have to do is we have to go up to View, Automation Mapping, and open up this window. Now, this may have a bunch of information in it. It may not, depending on what you've done. You can have auto map do a bunch of values for you that may or may not work for you. You know, you can click yes, get this. You can delete any of these by just clicking on the X. You can add another instance of your routing just by clicking on the add button. We're going to clear everything. We're going to start fresh. And there's a nice little trick here that we can actually learn both the automation mapping in Vienna Ensemble Pro and in Logic at the same time if we have our learn buttons enabled. So let's go ahead and go to add. And we're going to select a source. And we're going to go ahead and select, we're dealing with parameters, not with MIDI controllers. You can certainly work with MIDI controllers, but that's not the subject of this tutorial. I'm just going to keep it simple, parameters 1 through 32, and select this. Let me jump back over to Logic just for a moment because I want to break my mapping here. This is already on parameter 1, and let's go ahead and navigate up to some other parameter. And you can see you can pick any of these parameters that we have here. There's a huge number of them. I'm just going to arbitrarily map it to parameter 49, because it's going to snap back to parameter 1. It's going to learn this. So I'm going to go ahead and click Learn here. And let's go back to VEP. And I'm going to click on the Learn button here. And then what's going to happen is I'm going to manipulate Gravity's punish value here. And sure enough, it's updated here. And if we cross-reference 001 punish, we can see it right here. We have 001. And notice we're at parameter 1. If I go back to Logic now, this has been mapped back to parameter 1. So we could give this some significant name. Okay, significantly named. Let's do another mapping. And this is what's cool about VEP is you can actually do multiple instruments, a parameter from any given instrument that you have in your instance of Vienna Ensemble Pro. So let's go back to the mixer. And let me go ahead and open up the Zeta Plus 2. I'm going to keep this real simple. We'll just do the volume here. And to do that, I'm going to add here. I'm going to select a source. And I want it to be parameter 2, if I can navigate there promptly. And there we've got it. And then we're kind of out of room here. Let's see if I can get a parameter 2. No, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and open up our window for smart controls here. And allow the inspector to be available. Let's see if we can't get this to work here. And let's go back into Vienna Ensemble Pro. Okay, so we have parameter 2. I'm going to go ahead and hit on Learn here. And additionally, I'm going to go ahead and make sure this is selected, parameter 2 knob. And our second knob here, which is labeled parameter 2, I'm going to go learn up here. And we won't see a change in the label since it's already labeled with parameter 2. But let's go ahead with the process. We have this set, and I'm going to go down. If I can make enough room, here's our volume output for the zeta plus 2. And you can see it updates master volume. And as this was already set to parameter 2, it doesn't change its name like we tricked it over here to doing by moving it to a different assignment. Let's go ahead and label this, and we'll just call it zeta volume. Okay, so we've got that. Let's uncheck learn here. Let's close this out and bring gravity back in and bring VEP back in. Get rid of our automation window here. I've got my external controller control map via auto assign. So when I wiggle knob number 2, you'll see on the zeta plus 2, the volume move up and down. I go back to the mixer and we open up gravity. And I can move my first knob and you can see our value here. So what does that all mean? Well, it means we can manipulate these and record them in real time, a subject of another video. So let me go ahead and hit play and I'll manipulate just these 2 parameters. Let me make sure I've got this track soloed as well so we hear it as easily as possible. Further, let me go ahead and solo each instrument so you can hear this. I'm going to go ahead and solo the Kontakt. Let me go ahead and turn off solo there and solo the zeta plus 2. So you can hear the 2. Let me go ahead and manipulate them as they play then, both the punish and the volume of the zeta plus 2, which is the arpeggiation sound. And let's get solo off here. To get the idea on that, if we heard it within the whole band, so to speak, let's see if we can kind of pick that out, take solo off here, bump this up a bit. Let's go back to VEP so we can see our work here. And in fact, we can go ahead and open up Kontakt. We can watch the punish knob change here. Okay, you get the idea on that. A lot of activity going on in other parts as well. So to summarize, you need to map using your automation mapping, which is found in the View menu, Automation Mapping, or F5. Then you'd want to pick a parameter value, your choice here, and then you need to assign what parameter of what instrument you would like to use. The Learn button works a treat. Simply click it, wiggle your parameter, and it's great. And if you're clever and planning ahead, you can actually go into Logic, hit that Learn button, and it'll map the screen control at the same time. You got 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's how you can use smart controls with Vienna Ensemble Pro. It's very successful. Thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're taking a look at Omnisphere. And by the way, Trillion behaves exactly the same. If you have both plugins, this knowledge is good for Trillion as well. So I'm in the mixer view of my multi window here in Omnisphere. And the reason I'm in this view is because when I open up my smart controls for this track that contains the instance of Omnisphere, this is the default look. I've got my 8 screen controls, 1 level, 2 level, 3 level, 4 level. And you might say, those are rather cryptic. And in fact, they could be, except this is what they're mapped to by default. So if we wiggle the slider up here, we get the knob down here to move. And if I can get it to cooperate, there we go. We have exactly the same. So they're interactive. And that's all well and good if you want all these to map your mixer. You may not. So let's talk about changing mapping. Let me go back into my first instrument. I have 2 loaded up here. And I, by the way, have my part level, which is the same as what we saw in the multi-mixer level here. This is all the same, and all refers to the same knob the way it's mapped currently. And concurring that this is level 2 is my second instrument, which is here. If we go over here, we move this slider and we have the same action here. Perfect. Let's go back to the first instrument. Let's talk about doing some additional mapping. Now we could break any of the smart control mappings we have here, but let's create some new ones. So I'm going to go over here, and in this first instrument, I have two active layers, layer A and layer B. I'm going to go ahead and map these using the Learn feature in Smart Controls, but I have to do one step in Omnisphere first, and that's either Control or right-click, and Enable Host Automation is the menu item I need to select. So once I select that, and if we go back and either right-click or Control-click again, you can see it's assigned to an ID number 8. And in fact, you have ID slots 0 through 256, quite a few. And this is 8. The first 7, 0 through 7, happen to be taken up right here. If you want to unlearn anything at any point in time, once you have enabled host automation, you can unlearn here. We can go back. I'm right-clicking here. You can see enable host automation is now available again, and unlearn is not. Let's go ahead and enable host automation again. And I'd like the same thing on the volume for layer B, and you can see I've already done that. It's assigned to slot 9. So we'll leave that. And we can make reference to those slots over here, where it says Omnisphere level 2 or 2 level right now. If I click here, you see Omnisphere, and here's our menu item. And we go 0 to 256, so I'm not going to scroll down all the way just for the sake of brevity here. But you get to drill on that. So let's go ahead, now that we have the host automation enabled on these two sliders, let's map them. So let's go to Learn, and I'm going to select this screen control. Move this up and down, and we're good. Select this screen control. Move this up and down, and we're good. So now my mapping is as such. I have the volume output of the first instrument, the volume output of the second instrument, and within the first instrument, I have the level A and the level B. Now we could go ahead and name these again for brevity. I won't have done this in many other videos. Let me get out of Learn so I don't create problems for me there. As you go forward with your mapping, you might find it a little confusing. Omnisphere has a nice little thing. I can go up here and click MIDI Learn and Automation, Show Current Assignments. And this creates what I assume is an HTML document because it automatically opens up in my default web browser, which is Safari. And it gives me my list over here. So this will keep you current in your plugin as to what you've done for enabling automation within your slots. Again, 0 through 256, so quite a few choices. Let me quit Safari. Let's get back to where we want to be. I also have done some mapping to my external controller, part of it through auto assign here. So let's go ahead and listen to our instrument. I've got it basically soloed by muting all the other tracks. And I'm going to cut the level of the second instrument, and we'll listen to just the first instrument here. Let me make sure these are working properly. We'll kind of A-B the two instruments, and we'll play around with the timbre of that first instrument by adjusting the layer A and B mix sliders. All right, so let me go ahead and hit play, and here's our first instrument. And let's go back, and I'll now play the second instrument. So let's try to make it musical. I'm going to start with the first instrument and add the second instrument on the third note. So we might try for some effect like that. So there's our two instruments that we could play around with smart controls. And let me go ahead and kill the second instrument. Let's just listen to the two layers that we have with that first instrument. I'm going to go ahead and bring them down both all the way right now. And let me just start with the A layer. Hit return. And let's kill that and listen to the B layer. So again, we could do some live mixing if we wanted to. You'll find that once you enable automation, again, right-clicking or control-clicking on a parameter. Not all parameters have this, but I right-click here. You can see Enable Host Automation. Once I do that, it's going to assign it to the next available slot. It's the lowest in value that is available. So right now we'd probably be at slot 10. If you decide you want to unenable something you have enabled or unlearn it in spectrasonic speak, just click here. Then once that's enabled, and let's go through this process again. Let me go ahead and enable it. I can select a smart control here. I can hit learn. I can move that parameter, and it's instantly mapped. No muss, no fuss. It's all pretty straightforward in Omnisphere. Once you enable the host automation, you simply use the smart controls learn feature to map your screen control to a parameter in Omnisphere. So that's all I've got for you on this tutorial. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to start digging beneath the hood here on how auto-assign works with our MIDI controllers and preferences and setup, all sorts of good things like that. Let me go ahead and go up to Logic Pro 10 menu here and preferences. You'd think control surfaces would be under this, and in fact it's not. It has its own little area here, control surfaces and preferences. Now this will open up the same preference window, but with the Control Surfaces tab selected. Our business end of this is only in the MIDI Controllers tab. And here, if you have a supported MIDI controller connected and turned on, you'll see it, and you can either make it active or not with these checkboxes. From this window, we can access both the controller assignments window and the setup window. You can also access them up here under Control Surface, Controller Assignments, and Setup. And we see in Preferences. Take a look at Learn Assignment just briefly later on. Rebuild Defaults doesn't really affect us, but Bypass All Control Surfaces does. If this is selected, it takes all your control surfaces out of the picture, so to speak. So your mapping and everything will be useless at that point in time. All right, let's go ahead and use these buttons here to open up these windows, the Controller Assignments window, and we have Setup here as well. And let's just talk about what's going on. Setup really isn't too useful to us because the way this works, we don't have any parameters we can really adjust that affect us. So if I uncheck the Korg, you can see it disappears from both the setup and from our controller assignments window. Let's bring it back in. There it is. And I'll bring in my M audio as well. And again, this takes just a moment. You can see it shows up in setup, and you can see it shows up here in our controller assignments window. Here's the Axiom Pro 49. We see the parameters here. It has its own zone, and then we have the nano control, and it has its own zone as well. Since we don't need to spend any time in the control surface setup window, let's go ahead and close that out. And for simplicity's sake, I'm going to remove the M Audio Axiom Pro 49, so let's go ahead and check that. And I'm going to go ahead and close this window as well. Now, let's talk about how auto-assign works with smart controls a little more in depth here. So I'm going to hit the letter B to open up smart controls. And here I have my guitar track selected. And this reflects what I have in my track. Here's amplitude, tape delay, and space designer. We have a section for each here on our layout. If we go across here, we see parameter 1, parameter 2, note, deviation, bypass, and reverb output. We scroll up here to the top where we see our knobs. You can see this is their assignment. So we have our screen control, and we have it mapped already for us. For kicks, let's go to another track. Let's go to Omnisphere. And it immediately updates. You can see we have everything that says 1 level through 8 level. Here's our knobs up here, 1 level through 8 level. Now, sometimes you'll have some issues with this controller assignments window redrawing. You can simply click anywhere up here. You can see it was gray before, and now it's solid black. That means it's refreshed. So you basically want to refresh it. Sometimes you have to close it and open it. Usually this will do the trick. Sometimes things get a little wacky and you actually have to close your project and reopen it. So just an FYI there. So let's go ahead and go back to the guitar track here, and I want to open up the inspector as well down here in Smart Controls. And of course you get the cryptic name it kind of defaults to. If I select parameter 1, there we go. And you can see down here in my external assignment area, the mapping that it's already done. So if I move knob 1 on my controller, and we know that it's mapped to that because it says knob 1 is parameter 1, we'll see some movement. And notice that it jumped right to it here. By the way, if we close this window, and we double click on this pencil, it brings us to this window and to the item that we're working with. So let me go ahead and go to parameter 2 here, and go ahead and click right there. It updates us right here. Typically, you won't need to do anything with this information over here. However, once in a while, you're going to find that the format or the mode, and there are separate menus here for each of these, will make a difference in how, for example, a rotary knob might work. Normally, the defaults work just fine. Let me go back up and select knob 1. We have expert view here in the controller assignments window. Let me show you. If we go to easy view, it basically shrinks everything down. We have parameter 1, selected track, and here's our information here. And then we could learn it to something. We'll talk about learning momentarily. We can scroll through these parameters using the left and right arrows here. Here's parameter 2, parameter 3, which actually has note. And notice we're really going across our smart controls here. It was parameter 1, parameter 2. Here's note. Let's go back to expert view. And now you can see we've lost everything. We're going to close it and reopen it. And if that doesn't work for you, you can try clicking various things. But typically at this point, unfortunately, it's time to close the project and reopen it, which, by the way, is probably a perfect time for us to segue in how to map our external controllers. We've learned how to map in previous videos the screen controls to parameters in our channel strip. We're going to go into dealing with the mapping here. So I'm going to sign off for now. Again, we have our preferences up here under control surfaces, setup, preferences, controller assignments. We won't need to worry about rebuild defaults, and bypass all control surfaces does exactly that. You'll get no love from your control surfaces and logic at that point. And if we select preferences very quickly, it automatically selects the control surfaces tab. Here we have our MIDI controllers here in the checkboxes if we'd like to add something. There we've got it, and we're getting nothing here. So with that, I'm going to say adieu. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two. We'll catch you on the next one, which will continue with mapping our external controls. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at the problems that arise when we try to use different layouts of screen controls, yet maintain mapping that is consistent with our external assignments on our MIDI controller. So let me go ahead and create a few situations here, and we'll show you how to resolve them as well. Let's take this guitar track, for example, right now, and let's say we need another instance of it. If we want to keep our smart control mapping, the easiest way probably to do this is to duplicate the track, if not the contents as well. Let's just go ahead and duplicate the track up here with this button, and new track with duplicate settings. And man, we've got the same smart controls. Perfect. That's easy enough to do. All right. Let's take an instance where it's not quite so simple. Let's say that we don't want Space Designer. We don't want Tape Delay. We may want other plugins. You're going to find that if you remove them, it's going to change our layouts. And let me show you where I'm going with this. So let's go back to the guitar, the original guitar track. We have our output volume and amplitude, and this is parameter 4. And we can see it's mapping here with the inspector open. So this happens to be manipulated on my external controller by knob 8. Let's say I want to keep that standardization in this second guitar track. I go over here now and I search for parameter 4, and it's clear over here, and it's output volume, and it's knob 8. So we're good. Let's go ahead and add a different plugin. And just for kicks, let's do Bit Crusher. Let's go ahead and close that. And let's say we need some mapping on that as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and map all controls. It'll give us a different variation. So now when I go to parameter 4, it's now knob 6. So we've got a problem. It's going to be easier to change the layout to get this assigned to knob 8 than it is to reassign this to knob 8. So what we might consider doing is adding an additional plugin. And it really probably doesn't matter. Let's do Delay Designer. And let's go ahead and close that. And now you can see we have Amplitude, Bit Crusher, and Amplitude. Let's go ahead and remap again. Map all controls. And here's parameter 4. And you'll have mapping like this, which will be fine. And the mapping that you have will be consistent. We can rename this amp volume. And if we look now, amp volume, and it's knob 8. And if we go to this track, we can see we have the same parameter and the same location, although it's named output volume instead of amp volume. But we're good. So now knob 8, and I'll twist it right now on my external controller, is going to manipulate the correct parameter on both tracks. And I think that's just a nice consistency to have when you're working along here. Let's take another situation. I'm going up to Omnisphere, and I'm going to go ahead and add a reverb. And you might think, Doug, isn't Omnisphere wet enough as it is with all their lushness? But hey, bear with me for fun. All right, stereo. And it really doesn't matter what the patch setting is, so we'll just grab something here. Close that plugin window. And the smart controls haven't updated based on the audio effect that we've added here. So we can do a couple of things. We could select a new smart control. And let's go with a modern black 8 and see that it doesn't do anything for us. So let's say, hey, how about mapping? Let's go this way. Map all controls. And now it's giving me a little bit of love here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, reverb output, knob 6. Where I'm going with this is, let's say I want the reverb output of all my plugins to be knob 6. Let's go here. We have reverb output, knob 6. We're looking good. Let's go back to Omnisphere and say that we didn't wisely choose the modern black, but in fact we went to something else. We went to modern synth 12. And here our reverb output is now knob 4. Knob 6 is clear over here. So the smartest thing to do at this point in time is to remap reverb output to the knob. And we could move 4 level back to here as we need. The way to do that probably is either the learn process, or you could do it through your menu if we see in here over the inspector. Let's try the learn process. I'm going to select learn over here. That's in my Space Designer plugin. I'm going to go over here. Reverb output, it's right here. We've got that. And we can go ahead and close that out, and we're done. Now we have it double mapped. We have it here and we have it here. Our location physically in the layout may not be an issue, but now I happen to know that any point in time, knob 6 is going to be my reverb output. And it's okay to have it double mapped, or we could simply assign this to something else at this point, or select it, and we can go here and delete, and now it will be unmapped. If you'd like to unmap your controls, simply select the inspector button and turn it off. So now we have a more minimalist look. So there's a couple of examples with our external controller mapping and having it mapped to the same function regardless of what we have in the contents of our channel strip. So we're consistent, if nothing else, with the external controller manipulating the same item, or even in the layout. So if we go back to guitar, in fact, we have amp volume in this same position, and we have amp volume named output volume here in this same position. That, I think, is the easiest way to work with this. In the next video, we'll show deleting, manipulating, editing all of the screen controls, and we'll deal with the issues that it creates as well on that. All right, as always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at remapping our auto-assign mapping assignments, and we'll also take a look at manually mapping our smart controls. But first, let's dip into where we can find our preferences for our control surfaces, because once in a while things get screwy and you might need to move those out, delete them, whatever. So let me go to the Finder. I've navigated to my user library. If you don't know how to do that, you can go up to the Go menu, and yours may look a little different depending on what you have here. But if you hold down the Option key, somewhere library will show up. If I release the Option key, it's gone. If I hold it down, it's there. And that might be the easiest way to get to it. I've gone ahead and set up my library folder in my Finder window here. So I've gone library. Within that, I've got the preference folder. And here I've selected, it's actually easier to read it over here, com.apple.logic.pro.cs. And this can be deleted or moved to another location. And the next time you open Logic, it'll recreate it. And hopefully if there's been any corruption or problems, it will take care of that. All right, back to Logic here. So what I want to talk about now is reassigning my smart controls. Right now with auto assign, this screen control is knob 1. We have knob 2, knob 3, and now we jump down to 7 through 9 across here. I don't want that. I want these to be 4, 5, and 6. So I need to remap 4, 5, and 6. Let's go ahead and do that, and let's see what happens when we do. We hit learn here, and I'm going over to my external controller here, and I'm doing this, and we've got it mapped to my 4th knob. And all of a sudden we get a dialog box when I switch to the next screen control. So do you want to cancel the whole procedure? You want to keep both mappings, which normally you wouldn't want to do unless you need one external controller to manipulate multiple screen controls. At this point, we certainly don't. Or reassign. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do, is reassign. Now we're ready for the next screen control to be mapped to knob number 5 in this case. And if I jump over to the next screen control, we get the same dialog box. We're going to dismiss it. Let me go ahead and map this to my knob 6 and get out of learn mode. So knob 4, knob 5, knob 6. Now I want to point something out. If I go up here to tambourine, it does say knob 1, and if I hover over this long enough, there we go. It says zone nano control. And that's our nano control zone here. By breaking out of our auto assign, we've actually moved these screen controls and the respective external controllers, knob 4, knob 5, knob 6, up into the no zone area, but it doesn't always show up there. So I will show you that in just a moment here. Let's take a look at, again, back here, this is our first screen control on my knob 1. And I'm hoping that if I loiter over here long enough, there it goes. It shows zone nano control. If I go over here, we see nothing after the knob number, and that means it's in the no zone area. So what does that mean to us up here if we need to look at things? Well, it means a couple things. One, it's no longer in auto assign, so we could remove this Korg from our auto assign, and we'd still have that mapping. Let's see if we can find it before we remove it first. If we click up here in no zone, typically we won't see it yet. If we go down here, we're looking for knob 4, 5, and 6. Knob 5 kind of shows up. Let's go down to the bottom. And these are all screen redraw issues. Can we refresh? No, we can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and uncheck this box, and I'm going to recheck it. And now you can see knob 4, 5, and 6 move to the bottom. Further, if I uncheck this, we have our parameters up here in no zone 4, 5, and 6. So that's fine with us. They can stay there. Again, this is a higher level. No zone means that these will always function regardless of what zone is selected down below. Let's go back and bring our Korg auto assign parameters back in here. So what does this all mean? Well, it means that everything still functions as we expected. And we can go ahead and play our drums and have a little mixing fun. All right, you get the idea on that. Remember that mapping an external controller to smart controls affects all tracks. Let's look at the one with Omnisphere. And we can see this is knob 1, this is knob 2, this is knob 3, knob 7 now, knob 8 now. Typically, you might think of these across as 1 through 8, which would have been the default auto assign. Not the end of the world, just pointing out that it's a balancing act to get your smart controls to behave well on all tracks. You may find you want to have a common layout for all your smart controls, which would help facilitate mapping. Okay, let me go ahead and remove the Korg from this, and we're going to go up here to no zone, and I'm going to click in here and hit delete because I'm going to do some more mapping here. And there's a couple of things we can do when we want to just map manually, and we can certainly select a screen control, hit learn, and I'm going to go ahead and move my first knob on my Korg here. And I'm going to go and move the 8th knob on my Korg. And then I'm going to deselect learn. And you know, it's kind of smart. It says, hey, you just defined 2 assignments for the first and last of a consecutive row of parameters. Would you like to fill in between? I'm going to click OK. And now you can see it mapped everything. And while it didn't give the names, it just says learned. We can see I'm going to move knob number 2, knob number 3, knob number 4. And we can rename these up here. Go into learned, and we scroll back up here. We can type in here and just put in knob 1, and we're done. I won't rename all these for brevity's sake, but you get the idea on this. I'm going to go ahead and select all and hit delete again. I'm going to map these using my Axiom Pro 49, and we'll see what happens here. So I'm going to go learn, and here's my first knob, and notice I'm rotating and getting very poor value adjustment. I'm going to go to my eighth one, and I'm going to adjust it here. When I get out of learn, we don't get the same option to contiguously map everything, and your controller needs to send the right information to logic. The Korg Nano controller does, the Axiom Pro 49 does not. We have another issue. Our knobs don't work for squat. All right, so let's fix that. And that has to do with your value fields down here. We're going to go to Format. Well, first of all, before I change it, let's look at it again. I'm going to move the first knob here that's selected, the 1 level. And you can see it's either 0 or 1. It's basically on or off. So let's change this to unsigned, this to scaled. And actually, I've adjusted the knob 8 parameters. So let's go ahead and select this. And now take a look at this, and it works beautifully. Let's go back and do the same thing for the first knob, unsigned and scaled. Select it over here, and there you go. Perfect. Okay, that's all I'd like to cover for you in this particular tutorial. Again, we can bring in our auto assignment mapping by checking our checkboxes here for any supported devices. Can break those mappings, and when we break those mappings, they actually go up into the no zone area, which sometimes doesn't show up, sometimes it does. You may see things down at the bottom down here where these are showing up. And if we deselect that and go up into no zone, we can see them up here. So remember, all the channel strips, smart controls share common mapping to external controls. And you may want to spend a little time thinking about mapping your external controls and your screen layouts because of that. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at 3 elements here. We're going to do a learn command in Logic that will allow us to map our smart controls to our external controller. We're going to take a look at the link button in the controller assignments window, and we'll take a look at the easy view of the controller assignments window as well. Let's go up to the Logic Pro X menu, and I'm going to go to Control Surfaces, and we see right here it says Learn Assignment for Gain. It's in quotation marks, and you see the key command, Command L. This parameter in quotation marks is the last parameter I've manipulated on my channel strip. So let me go down and manipulate channel volume down here. Click to get out of this, and click once to move this. And again, you can't just select it like this. You actually have to manipulate it like I did with the channel volume here. Move it. Let's go back up. Control Surfaces, and you can see it says channel volume. Now let's go ahead and use the menu item. I'm going to click here rather than using Command L. What this does is it opens up our controller assignment window with the channel volume screen control selected, waiting for an external controller message. Let's go ahead and assign knob 1 to that. And the key command, Command L, will also turn off learn mode. Notice that it's on right now. If I go Command L, it turns it off. And if we close this out, and let's select tone, and not just select, but manipulate it, and let's do Command L, and it opens up our controller assignment window with the tone screen control ready to receive a message. So I'll do knob 2. Let's go ahead and go down to gain, manipulate that, and let's move knob number 3. And I'm going to go ahead and do amp output. Click so that gets moved, and it's ready to receive some controller information. And let's get out of learn mode to be safe. Now, we have these mapped. Knob 1, knob 2, knob 3, knob 4 to our Amplitube amplifier plugin. With the link button enabled up here, if I move a knob on my controller, and I'll move knob 1, it'll highlight channel volume. You'll see it actually selecting up here as well. Now, let me go and select knob 2 with the link off, which is tone, and you'll see no change in our selection up here. So I'm moving knob 2, and we get no change. And that's what link mode does for you. It takes your incoming controller message and shows you where it is up here in your list. So let's go ahead and leave it on. Now, let's go to Easy View. And Easy View is just a simplified view of Expert View. We can go here. Let's bring it down a little bit more to where we're at over here. And you can see it has some arrows. We can navigate through whatever parameters are in And I guess we're going to be toggling back and forth here. Whatever parameters are here, we can navigate through them with our arrows. We have channel volume, tone, gain, and amp output. And that's the four we've gone ahead and mapped so far. And at that point, it says, where do you want to go? Typically, you want to leave it to its default, which is selected track. You have choices of audio, instrument auxiliary output, and master. All of these are going to have choices because it's audio channel strip 1, instrument channel strip 1 or more. You could have multiple auxiliaries, multiple outputs, although most people don't work that way. But you only have one master, so you'll see this value will not be available to you at this point. Let's go to output. We could see how it's lit up there versus master, which is grayed out. Let's go back to audio. The one is lit up. Back to the default of selected track. And it will always show your controller input message as well here. So we could delete any of these. Let's go ahead. We have amp output selected. Let's delete it. And let's say we want to learn something. So we can go ahead and manipulate amp output again, hit learn, and it shows it. And I'm going to go ahead and manipulate knob number 4 again, and it's reassigned it. Let's go back to expert view. And we have amp output again. Let's add something new in easy view. I'm going to manipulate the screen control for tape delay, which is the note length. And now it says note up here. And let me go ahead and select learn here. And let's go back actually and try note length again. Selecting learn. And now I'm going to manipulate knob 5, and we have that. Let's go back to expert view and see how this worked out for us. And we have everything set up here. Again, you can scroll through these items, you can delete them, you can learn. Here's our arrow up here for scrolling through. So to reiterate, we have the possibility of going up into control surfaces, learn assignment for note. And if we have that enabled, Command L for that. And when we enable that, let's go ahead and close this window out. So I'll go Command L, and it automatically opens up in easy or expert view, depending on what you've last used. I kind of like expert view. It just gives me a lot more information. It hasn't received anything. It's looking for a second assignment here. We could go to, say, deviation here, and it'll update the deviation. We can assign it to a controller. And just like that, we're done. If we have our link button enabled, it will update based on our external controller manipulation. It'll highlight whatever of these that are mapped. And we have our choice of easy view here, toggling in. We can navigate with the arrows, we can delete, we can learn. And generally, we'll probably leave it to the menu selection of selected track. All right, that's all I've got for you on this particular video. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to go ahead and take a look at manipulating and automating our manipulations of a parameter in a given plugin. So I've got Omnis here instantiated and opened here with the default smart controls down here. And what I'd like to do, I'd like to change the timbre of my plugin by adding and subtracting the string sound that's part of this Omnisphere patch. So I need to map this, and I'd like to map it to my first screen control here. By default, smart controls are defaulting to the output levels of your 8 instruments you can have in your multi. So let's go ahead and remap this. And first off, we need to enable host automation on whatever parameter we'd like to work with. I want to use this mix slider for the level of layer B. I can right click on it, and I can see I've already done it. It shows host automation ID 9. If I hadn't have done such, let me right click on something else. See, it says enable host automation. That's what you want to check at that point in time. Okay, so I'm going to hit learn over here. And I'm going to move this up and down, and we're essentially good for mapping. Let's test it with the controller. Great. I want to record this movement as automation, so let's go to touch. And let me go ahead and essentially solo this track so we can hear it a little better here. And let me hit return. I think it'll be pretty obvious as I bring the string sound in here what's going on. Okay, let's hide the plugin, and you can see my beautiful artwork here. And notice, by the way, by using touch and just manipulating my external controller, it automatically selected the correct value. You can use this for offline editing as well, or you can go to your automation parameters windows. You would go up to smart controls, and you need to know which one to select, and that'll give you this same parameter lane here. So that's easy enough. Let's go ahead and hear it with the rest of the band. Okay, not quite so obvious perhaps in the mix, but it's there. By the way, never hesitate to quickly get out of your record mode here. I'm in touch. Let's go back to read, so just playback only for safety. Let's take a look at another plugin here. And I've got my Kontakt player with gravity, and we'll use punish. That's a pretty obvious one here. So punish is assigned a knob 2, and it seems like everything is perfectly mapped at this point in time. So again, all I need to do, go to record mode. I prefer touch at this point in time. Hit play. Make sure I'm back at the start of my song here. Okay, you get the idea on that. There's no mistaking the punish sound here. It's pretty brutal. And we can get out of our record mode, go back to read, playback. Okay, very straightforward. So smart controls and automation are very easy to work with. All you need to do is make sure that your mapping is correct to your software instrument or other element on your channel strip and to your external controller. Then I prefer to put it into touch mode to record my automation. And then we're done, essentially. Don't forget to put it back to read. So that's all I've got for you on this particular tutorial. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gives you a tip or trick or two, and we'll catch you on the next one. In this video on Logic Smart Controls and third-party plugins, we're going to take a look at using the expression pedal and also the feature capture as a recording with smart controls. Now I've got an instance of Amplitube over here, and within that I instantiated their Morley wah, and within the plugin I mapped that to parameter 5, and the screen control of said name I mapped to the expression pedal. And we're all good here. So if I move my expression pedal up and down, you'll see this, but more importantly, if we play the guitar, we'll get sound. Okay. Now if I hit record right now, all I would get is the audio from my guitar, not the wah. And we want the wah automation to be recorded as well. So to do so, what I need to do in this track with automation view enabled is select touch. This way, I get both at once. Okay, and we can zoom in on the region. We can see the automation was recorded, and we can see the guitar in the background, and we can play it back. Okay, let's get out of touch mode ASAP, back to read mode to be safe, and let's talk about something else here. And this is new to the latest version of Logic, which is, as of this video, 10.3.2. And that is you can record a smart control using the capture last take as recording command. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to Omnisphere and solo it and just give a quick demonstration of that. Let me go back to the beginning of the project. And I'm going to go ahead and manipulate the first instrument volume level in Omnisphere. Now, in order for this to work, you have to do this with the screen controls. You cannot do this with an external controller. But let's go ahead and hit play. As long as I hit stop, I even can go back to the beginning, but I can't hit play again or manipulate anything else. If I hit Shift and the letter R, it actually captures that screen control automation as a recording. So where is it, you might ask yourself? So let's hit the letter A to enable automation view. You can see it in the background. We need to make sure that the region automation is selected. Here's track, here's region, and then we need to navigate up to smart controls, one level, and you can see it right here. And that's our recording. So that's a nice new feature in Logic. In conclusion, I was really hoping to include East-West Play plugin in this tutorial, but I will tell you that I own a number of their plugins and they are quite good, but they are not set up to work with smart controls. So I thank you for sticking around until the end of this series. As always, thanks for watching. Hope this gave you numerous tips or tricks, and catch you on the next series.